But still, I swore her to secrecy because I didn't want anyone else at uni to know I was feeling a bit weird, because then they wouldn't think I was a real man or whatever.
So welcome to another episode of the Everymind at Work podcast. I'm joined with George today from Sanctus. And George, just to begin, if we can kind of go back, what kind of led you into the line of work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so as I'm sure is the case with most of us in doing this kind of work, I've had my own struggles with my mental health. I think when I was younger, mental health didn't mean anything to me. I knew that I had physical health, but yeah, mental health wasn't a term that came into my life, and I think because of that I didn't pay it any attention. I didn't work on it, and yeah, I probably pursued unhealthy habits at uni as many of us do. But what I was doing was neglecting my mental health to quite a big degree, and then I started struggling with mental health, and I didn't realise it at the time, but it was depression and anxiety, and I didn't label it as those things for, I think it was about a year, like a long time, because I didn't know it was those things. I think even if I did, or when I eventually did know that, I didn't want to use that label for a while because of the shame and stigma attached with it. So I think I just went on this horrible journey with mental health where this thing started happening to me and I didn't know what to do about it, or what to even call it, or where to go for support. And when I did eventually start seeking support, when I really started struggling, I started to become quite suicidal. I knew I needed to reach out. Then I was just met with long waiting times and misinformation, and I tried different types of therapy, like hypnotherapy. I was paying one hypnotherapist, I think it was like £400 an hour, which is crazy money when I look back, and I spent thousands on this lady, and it didn't do anything for me. And I wonder if I wonder if she doesn't help for anyone. It was just so much money to spend on something that I saw no improvement from, and then actually it made me feel even worse because I spent all this money thinking it was going to be the silver bullet, and it wasn't. So I just went on this horrendously long journey with my struggles, and eventually I found the right therapist, and I got back on the road to recovery, which was amazing. But I think just looking back on that whole period, I was like, I want to do whatever I can to help anyone else ever having to go through that. But then also, I think back to when I was younger and I didn't even think about mental health. I want people to realise that they have it and they can proactively work on it before they get to the kind of shit bit and then have to react to it. So yeah, pretty much since I've come out the other side, it's just been, I've just had like this burning fire in me to do something about it, which is funny because before that, all I wanted was the classic money and suits up in London or whatever. Whereas now all I think about is just helping people to I guess get out of a tough spot if they're in one, but also to know that by paying attention to their mental health and working on it, they can actually grow as individuals.
Yeah, I think really I can really resonate with that story. Personally, obviously we know each other a little bit. And what really resonated with me as well is when you said that you didn't even know you had mental health. It was the same with me. Mental illness for the first 18 years of my life was just not in my thought at all until it affects you, until it impacts you. And whenever we do an engagement session, I always kind of ask them anonymously, have you ever struggled with mental health? And it's yes, no, or not sure. And the amount of people that say not sure is because they can't really kind of put have I struggled with mental health? They don't really know. So if we can touch on that, what was the kind of turning point? Was there obviously as low as you possibly could go before you seek the help, or was it something else?
Yeah, so I think it was about 10 months before I had a conversation with someone about the fact I was struggling. So for 10 whole months, it was just kept in my head. And then it was actually around that 10-month time, I started going out with this girl, and she said something to me like, you can be so cold, or you are so cold, or something like that. And that really cut me deep, because I like to think I'm not a cold person. So then it all just came out, and I was like, look, something's going on with me. I don't know what it is. I just feel weird, and I'm not myself, and I don't know like what else to tell you. So I couldn't even like vocalize it. I couldn't even articulate what I was feeling. But then she was amazing, and she was doing what she could to support me. You know, she did as well as she could, bearing in mind I wasn't really able to tell her how I was feeling. But still, I swore her to secrecy because I didn't want anyone else at uni to know I was feeling a bit weird, because then they wouldn't think I was a real man or whatever. And then I just think, actually, over a period of months after that, my mental health just deteriorated because I wasn't working on it and I wasn't taking the steps I needed to get better. Actually, I was still doing things I shouldn't do. I was still going out, I was partying, I wasn't looking after myself. I was in a job I hated, I was working horrendous hours, so I was still pushing myself at the other end and actually not working on the depression and the anxiety. And so I think I just became increasingly worse, to the point where she started to worry about me, and she told my parents got involved. They, you know, strongly suggested I went to the doctor, so I sort of begrudgingly went and did that, and that was when I got hit with this label of like major depressive disorder or whatever. And I think also my parents had a couple of family friends who they knew had been through a similar thing, and they were trying to tell me to go and speak to them, and again I was like, no, I don't want anyone outside of this circle to know. And then again, just as after the months it got worse and worse and I was getting more and more desperate, I was like, okay, let's just have a conversation with these people. So I think it was as I became more and more desperate and I started to realise that actually this thing, which I now know was major depressive disorder, wasn't going to go by itself. And I think then it really was when I started to struggle with suicidal thoughts that I felt I had to do something. Because before it was just, I felt like it was this thing that would go on its own or whatever. Whereas when I got to that period and I was struggling with those thoughts, I was like, right, I'm in a bit of shit now, because I'm telling myself I need to do this thing. So if that's the route I'm going down, then I should do whatever I can to try and avoid that. So that's when I kind of kicked into action. But even then, I mean, it's hard because you know, the thing you need to kick yourself into action, like your brain, it's foggy and it's not working and it's telling me that I shouldn't be here. So it was really hard to motivate myself to do it. But I think it really was when I was at that desperate point that I thought, I need to do something else, I've got another option.
And kind of looking back to obviously see where you're at now and doing the work you're doing in the mental health space, what was it at that point that kind of helped you? Was it a series of things that helped, or was it this one, you know, action that you took that kind of made you start feeling a little bit better?
So there was like a series of things at first. I'm sure you were the same. Like I got, you know, stuck into all the self-help books and the motivational quotes on Instagram and the Tony Robbins videos. And I think watching stuff like that, you know, the motivational quotes kind of inspired me a bit, and Tony Robbins videos around mindset started to make me think, oh, maybe I can kind of get my way out of this.
Yeah.
I started to go to CBT therapy. That started to help because I felt like I found this sort of modern therapy. You know, I'd always thought that therapy was just going into your childhood or whatever, and I was like, maybe there's stuff there, but I don't need to go back there. But then I found this therapy that was actually about changing your thoughts and looking ahead, and I was like, that's a bit more of me. So I kind of felt like I found the thing that maybe might help me. But then I think the kind of big catalyst moment for me that I always remember is going to see one of my family friends that my mum had been trying to get me in touch with. And yeah, I think this guy was someone that I like respected so much. He was so like warm and loving and so personable. Everyone loved him. He was running his own businesses, so he was quite successful. So I'd always respected him and put him on this pedestal. And when my mum said to me, he's been through a similar thing as you, I was like, no way, because he's a real man. Like, look at him, he goes to the gym, he's strong, he's got his own business. And she was like, honestly, go and have lunch with him. So I went for lunch with him, and he just said, look, I don't know what's going on for you. You don't have to share, but I'll tell you what has gone on for me in the past. And he said, look, I've never told anyone this. My wife knows a little bit, but not a lot, so don't share it. But here's what happened. And he just he just went into his whole story, and yeah, there was so much in that I was going through. He talked about suicidal thoughts, and I was just blown away, because I got myself into the state of thinking that I was broken, and I wasn't a real man, and I was never going to achieve the things I wanted to. And actually, there was this guy telling me that he'd been through it, he'd got better, and he'd achieved all the things he'd ever wanted and more. So I think that was when I really thought, I can get out of this, because it can be hard sometimes when you're reading blog posts online, of a guy living in the States who's gone through it, he's got better, because you're like, cool, he's gone through it, but I'm different, or you can't really feel connected. Whereas when it was with someone I knew, and he just like looked me in the eye and said all of that gave me a lot of hope. And then I think from there, I was still ill for a long time, and it took work, but I felt like I knew the work was going to get somewhere. Whereas before I was like, am I just going to therapy and I'm too broken to fix?
Mm-hmm. So I think it comes down again maybe to the whole vulnerability element of it as well. And I'm guessing maybe you've seen it. I know we share the same values, that everyone has mental health, everyone has a story, everyone should be able to talk about it, we should normalise the conversation around it. Have you found now, with you being more open about it, you've almost become like that guy who sat opposite you at that table and shared his story that helped you? Mm. Have you found people have now gravitated towards you to kind of talk about how they're feeling as well?
Yeah, 100%. Like I get it a lot on like nights out, or mates just drop things casually into conversation now, like, yeah, that thing on the weekend made me feel super anxious, and it's just said as if it's nothing, whereas I think before it wasn't. And I think I love that, but I want that for everyone. And yeah. I think what I've learned is that everyone has a thing they could talk about. Maybe it's not a big crisis. Maybe it's just like a little niggly thing they want to talk about. But yeah, people don't want to come across as weak or as vulnerable. But actually, seeing someone else, especially someone they know, opening up, it gives them the permission to then share the thing they want to share, because they know they can do it without fear of judgment. So they start sharing, and then people start sharing to them. And I think that's how you create like a wave of people opening up, by you give them the permission. I'm sure it's exactly the same with you. You must get it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I asked. And again, I think it again comes back to that whole, you being open, honest, vulnerable allows other people to feel safe. And then going back to your original story of you being in that sort of dark place, not wanting your girlfriend to tell anyone else because you felt like you was the only one going through that. Probably when you look back at that, everyone around you was going through something as well.
Like since then, I've had people say, "Oh yeah, I was going through something similar at uni," and it almost like breaks my heart looking back, because it just, when I was really struggling at uni, I was still the first one on the team sheet on a night out. I was the one pushing the late nights, the clubbing, the staying up late. It was me in the WhatsApp group trying to round up the troops. So everyone is forgiven for thinking I was absolutely loving life, and I now know that there's other people in a similar situation who are also hiding things. But again, you can put on a brave face so easily, and it's just tiring. As you know, it's exhausting. I was exhausted at uni because I was living like multiple lives. Like I was trying to be the happy George everyone knew, whereas really I was really struggling. So I think people just want to be able to take off the mask a little bit and be who they really are, because it can be exhausting, being two different people. And that's not just wearing a mask to hide struggles. It can be wearing a mask that a lot of people put on in the workplace because they feel they have to be a certain way, and it's so exhausting. I'm sure like you know
100%. It's like wearing that mask. I always say struggling with mental health is tiring. Struggling with mental health, pretending that you're okay, is exhausting. It just kind of like amplifies the actual feelings that you're going through. So moving forward, obviously with Sanctus. So how long have you been working for Sanctus?
I've been there about a year and a half now, and we've been going for 3 years.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about Sanctus first?
Yeah. So Sanctus basically came from the sort of place or the belief that a lot of the conversation around mental health, as we sort of touched on, it focuses only on the mental health issue part, or the 1 in 4 that will have a mental health issue stat, which, yeah, as we both know, that we've both been in that bit, and it's such an important part of the conversation. But what we kind of say is we want open that conversation up and actually talk about the fact that 4 in 4 people have mental health. It's every single one of us. Rather than like separate the two parts, let's talk about it as one spectrum that we're all on. We're all on it together. We can slide up and down at any point, but we should be in it together. And I think we basically draw a lot of analogies with physical health and say that physical health, the whole spectrum is spoken about. People will go to the doctor when they feel unwell. At the other end, people are going to the gym, or they're working out, or they're going for runs, or eating healthy, and we want that same conversation to be had around mental health. So to acknowledge that some people will struggle, and that needs to be there needs to be support for that. But equally, people, even if they're not struggling, can still work on their mental health. So we kind of, it feels like a crazy grand ambition, but one day we want to put mental health gyms like on the high street, every high street around the world, give people a space to work on their mental health proactively. What we basically do at the moment is put like a version of the gym within the workplace, which takes the form of coaching. So we give all individuals, whatever seniority they are, space to just talk and work on the mental health, wherever they're at on the spectrum, and it's completely confidential, completely impartial, completely safe. We just give people a space that they probably never take for themselves.
Mm. How do you envision those gyms to look? I'm guessing, is it kind of been, we want this, we want that? Is it very much like an open environment that people come and share, or is there more to it?
To be honest, I think we're about 5 years off. So there's no like blueprints yet.
Yeah.
When people ask,
my ideas are already rolling in. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think the dream is that we just have the gym, and in there you can go in for physical health or mental health, spiritual health, financial health, whatever it is. It's just a health gym, and if that means you go in and you have like a boxing class, and then there's a therapist in there, and there's a financial consultant and some yoga meditation. I think for me that's the dream. Maybe there's like group classes, group therapy, group coaching. I think that is the dream, because when you're looking after every part of your well-being, whether it's your money or it's your mind or your body, when all of that's in sync, that's when you're at your best. So I don't want to see like a Virgin Active and then a Sanctus.
Yeah.
I don't want just like one space and people know they can go in there for all their health.
And I think what's really important with the gym is the community element of it as well. You go there and you work out on your own, but you have that community feel where you can connect with other people. It's normally around physical health, what you're working on. I think that community element around mental health is needed as well. It's such an important part of my recovery, and I think a lot of people's recovery, is to have that community in place. So in terms of you working in companies for Sanctus, what have you seen is a lack at the moment? Like, what are companies maybe missing out on that they can do to improve mental health at work?
I think for a start, I think the attitudes of managers and senior leaders isn't where it needs to be, and that is what sets the precedent and the culture within a business. So if a leader is standing up and telling people that stress is part of the job, or which is part of jobs, but if they're saying that it doesn't, you can't talk about it here, or you need to just work through it, or you need to be more resilient, then it sends the message down that actually struggle isn't accepted here, and then people don't talk about it, and then we get into a situation that we've been in where you don't talk about it, and then it becomes worse. So I think senior leader attitudes needs to change. And then I think also then that a lot of companies aren't catering for the whole mental health spectrum as we're doing. I know you're doing, you want to talk about the whole mental health spectrum. I think a lot of companies focus only on the 1 in 4 part, which such an important part, and you need things in place for that, but actually preventative measures can stop people getting to that point as well. So I think that those are the two things for me, that leaders set the tone, and then you've got a full program in place. And if leaders are endorsing that, then there's top-down pressure, but actually there's then bottom-up pressure, because employees start to get behind it, and then, as you say, there's a community feel develops, and people start talking to each other. And when you've got colleagues talking to colleagues, you've got colleagues talking to managers, you've got a wealth of support in place, then I just think you're catering for everyone's needs, and that's how making the real change within that company, but then obviously that trickles out into society too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it empowers all employees as well if they can be a part of that change too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I agree it starts at the top, but if we can empower employees as well to speak openly about it. And I'm guessing what you was kind of talking about there is at the moment it's very reactive. Mm-hmm. Even like mental health first aid is obviously very reactive, whereas like if we can focus more on the proactive side of it.
Mm. Yeah, because what I think, so I was ill for like 2.5 years, and I think, as I said, the first 10 months, maybe towards the end of that, I was starting to struggle more, but at least for the beginning bit, I definitely just felt weird. I'm sure there was a bit of anxiety and a bit of depression, but I wasn't in a terrible, terrible state. But I didn't think I needed to work on it then.
Mm.
I think if I'd known that mental health was a thing then, I needed to be more proactive, I could have worked on the thing then and probably prevented it ever having to get to the point where I was suicidal or I was bouncing from therapist to therapist. So I think it's about helping people to be proactive even if they're in a good period, but actually there's a lot of people who I think probably just feel a little bit off kilter or a little bit weird who could be preventative and then not have to go to the reactive solution when it gets really bad. But typically in this country we wait until the thing's bad to then get the support, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I talk a lot about that with my dad. Like when I share his story, the breakdown was overnight. It was the dad that we all knew. Overnight, behaviours changed. In 7 days' time, he attempted suicide. But I also now talk about how in my dad's mind, it wasn't overnight. In my dad's mind, he had those thoughts, those feeling all of this for years, which we didn't know. And I don't think he knew. Like, how do you he just probably didn't know what he was going through. So the day my dad got help and went to seek for the doctors was exactly the same as what you've said. When he's at a crisis point of, I feel like I'm going to do something, I need help. Whereas as I look at it now, if maybe my dad got help 3 years ago, 4 years before that, 2 years before that, maybe the story would have been completely different. So I'm completely with you on that. Now, do you think a lot of companies avoid proactive solutions because it's a long-term change rather than a quick fix that they can obviously...
Yeah, and I think companies are caught up in looking at what's the ROI of mental health. So if I invest in this thing, what am I going to get back? And I think a bit more data and stats are coming into the conversation. Obviously the work you're doing, you're looking at data as well, which is amazing, but it's probably not quite where it needs to be yet for companies to fully get behind it. So, physical health, companies just invest in because it's the right thing to do. And they just know that, but they're not like measuring the ROI of employees going to the gym. They're not checking their weight or their muscle growth. Whereas mental health, they're caught up in this need to find the ROI, and because that's harder to prove, companies are like, I don't want to invest in this huge proactive solution for people that are fine. Like, I don't need to pay for something when they don't need anything. So I think that's the issue. It's hard because you almost can't. I can talk about the fact that I still go to coaching now and it's helping me to level up and I'm growing and working on my mental health and it's amazing, but that's all qualitative. And a CEO of a big company is going to say to me, well, what does that mean for my work? And I can say, well, I work hard and I'm more productive, but they're like, well, what's that like in numbers? I think it's so hard to prove it. I know being proactive is making me a better version of myself, but it's hard to put that into numbers and stats. Where you do get numbers and stats are the people that get signed off work because they're ill, or sick days are lost, or if you bring in an EAP, maybe that reduces. So you can see that really easily. Where it's hard to see the proactive part.
It's so true. I've never thought of it that way. That physical health is just here. It is. Use it as an initiative. They're not tracking it, but with mental health, they want something from it.
And even just how far behind the conversation is.
Do you think there'll be a time where there's parity of esteem between physical health and mental health? Do you think we're a long way from it?
There's like two parts of me wrestle with that question. I've got the optimist in me.
Yeah.
It's like, I will get there. But then I think the realist in me is, it says we've got a long a long way to go. I think even I don't know if you're the same, but I think just even doing the work I do and being in the industry, so even sometimes if I don't feel my best, I'm like, are people at work going to think I'm not capable of doing the job or whatever? And maybe those thoughts don't linger, but they do creep into my head. So I think even I still have some of that like stigma left over or negative perception. So I think if it hasn't completely gone for me, then some of the old guard who are miles back with their thinking that there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm confident that in my lifetime and in our lifetime we'll see the change.
I always now say, mental health is so generational. Like my granddad's 94, still alive. His viewpoint on mental health is completely different to mine. And then, my boys, what's their viewpoint on mental health? I always feel that if my great-grandkids can look up and say, granddad or great-granddad Paul did something, then I'll be happy. I think it was going to take that much time. I think it's going to be a huge, because the education system, etc.
I agree, because when I talk to how my job's going with my granddad, for example, he wants to know how big's the team, have you taken any investment, have you had a pay rise? He wants to talk in terms of like business, whereas some of my mates will be more like, how have you been recently? So it's, my granddad doesn't want to know about the actual work we do or people's mental health. He wants to know is the business growing. So I think there's like more emotional intelligence as the generations seem to go down, right?
It's interesting. I think it will take a long time, but again, I think companies, everyone needs to start, and then, you'll be further ahead as time goes. With the work you're doing at Sanctus, what kind of benefits are you seeing companies and employees having?
Yeah, so it's a wibble because we don't track a lot of like the data, so we don't track things like sick days, productivity. We say that although we work with businesses, so we're technically B2B, we say we're a B2C brand, like what we care about is the gym on the high street and the consumer. So everything we do is focused around the consumer. So I think a lot of the stuff we track is more qualitative, like we get anonymous feedback. But I think just reading some of that is like amazing. And if ever we get stuck in the day-to-day and work feels stressful, we sometimes just go back to that, and it kind of reminds us why we do what we do, because people leave comments saying that one coaching session or coaching sessions have changed their life, and I think for me that there's no almost like greater success than knowing that someone's gone in for a coaching session and actually that their life has changed in whatever way that looks like for them. And then I think some people do leave us more like quantitative data. Some people say that because of a coaching session they've increased their billing figures or whatever, but I think it's that kind of like heartwarming stories where people say that this has got me through a hard time, or it's helped me make a decision I didn't know I needed to make. I think that's what feels amazing. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's the same for me. The intention's always been to help someone like my dad, or to help that one person, and then it kind of evolves around, that. I think companies are very, again, as you say, caught up on the numbers, attaching an ROI to mental health. There's an amazing CEO of a company called Julius Baer, David, and he just said, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We're doing it because it's human beings. It's, we want to provide the support for them. And I think if more people can have that outlook that, as you say, it's someone's life, you're doing it because it's, the right thing to do, then hopefully that's what we can start judging performance on as well. I think that I feel like everyone's mental health is their own responsibility, and they need to take responsibility to look after that for
100%.
themselves. But I do think the company that an individual works at has a duty to a degree to look after that individual. Companies expect a lot from people, and I don't think it's wrong to help support people through a potentially long career in a business, because it is the right thing to do. And I think we take a pretty firm stance on it. Like, we get some businesses who say they want to know what's happening in the coaching sessions, even if it's like themes, so maybe not individual feedback, but maybe we can feedback high level themes. But I think we always stand firm and say, well, that's not what we're there for. We're there for the individual, to have a safe space where things aren't fed back. And some businesses don't like it because they want to know, they want to know all the data and the stats. And that is fair. I understand that helps them make informed decisions. But I think when companies are doing it only for that reason, then it can be quite dangerous, because then suddenly people's mental health is measured against only a number, whereas there's so much more to it than that, and doing the right thing is one of those things.
100%. So George, I want to end it with 2 questions, if you don't mind. First question would be that if someone's maybe watching this, they may be feeling in a place where you was before. What advice would you give to them to support themselves right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is what worked for me, and it's going to sound so cliche, but I always just say, like, reach out to someone. I know that sounds like it's the thing that everyone's saying to do, and
it's true.
and some people might be in a place where they don't feel they can do that as easily, but I think just speaking from my own experience, it was eventually reaching out to people that then allowed me to kind of learn more about what I was going through and actually reach in. So it wasn't the ongoing reaching out that got me better. It was doing that, learn a bit more, and then I could really go inward and work on myself. And I reached out to people who didn't really know what to say, or I probably shouldn't have, or they weren't the right people, and I got some bad advice or some stupid comments or whatever, and I think that was part of it. But I also reached out to some people like the family friend and therapists who were amazing. So I think, as cliche as it sounds, that would be the thing I'd start with.
Awesome. And then on the flip side of that, if someone's maybe looking to support someone close to them, whether it's a co-worker, a family, a friend, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, obviously, everyone's like at a different point of their mental health and a different journey. So I think you don't want to try and take the role of the advice giver or like the prescriber, or telling them what they should do. I think obviously maybe some advice can be useful, but what people generally need at first, at least, is just like a listener, someone to just lend an ear. That person just wants to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. I think that can go a long way. And then I think give what advice you are able to give from your own experience. But I think I've always learned that sharing your own kind of experience as much as possible is what people can really, really relate to. So if people share like a story with me now of their depression, I'll always share mine. I think people can really, really connect with that. And then I think talking about personally the things I did to get better, and say that's what worked for me, then you've kind of given some people some ideas of maybe where they can go next. But really the main things are listen, check in with that person. Don't be judgmental. Don't tell them what they should do. Just kind of maybe tell them what you have done. Just be there for people, really. Support through love rather than support through solutions, I guess. Yeah, 100%. That's a perfect one. Jules, tell everyone where they can find out more about you. I know you're very active on LinkedIn at the moment. I've been following you, which is very, very good. And following your footsteps. And a little bit about Sanctus. So where can they find out more about you and Sanctus? Cool, yeah, so I'm just George Bow on LinkedIn, and then for Sanctus, sanctus.io. Excellent. George, thank you for coming on, mate. Great. I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this, please let us know in the comments below, and see you all in another episode very soon.